The sky above New Terra turned black that morning, not from clouds or smoke, but from thousands of alien ships that appeared out of nowhere. Captain Jack Morrison was drinking his third coffee of the day when the alarm started screaming. He dropped the cup and ran to the command deck, his boots echoing through the metal corridors. What he saw through the observation window made his blood run cold. The Valkyrie had arrived. Their bio-ships were massive, living things that pulse and breathe like giant organisms floating in space. They move with purpose, blocking out the sun completely. Within minutes, New Terra was cast into an artificial twilight. Jack had heard stories about the Valkyrie. Every soldier in the human colonies had. They were the nightmare that kept military commanders awake at night. But hearing stories and seeing them with your own eyes were two completely different things. The outer defense grid was supposed to hold off any attack for at least a week. That's what the engineers had promised. That's what Command had told them. Jack watched those defenses get shredded in less than 20 minutes. The automated defense platforms fired everything they had, but the Valkyrie ships just absorbed the damage. Some of the bio-ships even seemed to heal themselves, their organic hulls closing up after taking direct hits. New Terra wasn't a military base. It was a mining colony, home to 50,000 people who came here to work, to build lives, to raise families far from the crowded cities of Earth. Jack knew many of them by name. He'd attended their weddings, their kids' birthday parties. He'd shared meals with them in the colony cafeteria. These weren't just numbers on a report. These were real people. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Danny Costa, stood beside him, his face pale. Danny was young, only 24, fresh out of the academy 2 years ago. He'd never seen real combat before. None of them had, really. New Terra was supposed to be a quiet posting. "Sir, what do we do?" Danny's voice cracked slightly. Jack didn't have an answer yet. He pulled up the tactical display, his fingers moving across the holographic controls. The numbers didn't lie. 200 soldiers in their garrison, maybe another 100 civilian volunteers, if they armed everyone who could hold a weapon. Against what? The computer estimated between 30 and 40,000 Valkyrie warriors on those ships. Then he saw her ship. It was bigger than the others, positioned right in the center of the formation. Queen Ravenna's command vessel. Jack felt his stomach drop. She was here personally. Queen Ravenna wasn't just any Valkyrie commander. She was their supreme leader, the one who had crushed 14 human colonies without ever suffering a single defeat. Intelligence reports said she stood nearly 10 feet tall, had 4 arms that could rip through steel, and possessed a tactical mind that outsmarted every human general who'd faced her. The communication console beeped. It was High Command, calling from 3 systems away. Admiral Peterson's face appeared on the screen, looking tired and defeated already. "Captain Morrison, I'm not going to lie to you. We can't send reinforcements. The fleet is spread too thin across the outer colonies. We're authorizing immediate evacuation of New Terra." Jack nodded slowly. He'd expected as much. "How many ships can you send us, sir?" There was a pause. Peterson looked away from the camera. "We're diverting every civilian transport we can spare. They'll arrive in approximately 68 hours. And how many people can they carry?" Another pause, longer this time. "Total capacity is 27,000. Maybe push it to 30 if we pack them in." The number hit Jack like a punch to the gut. 30,000 out of 50,000. That meant 20,000 people would be left behind. 20,000 men, women, and children who would die when the Valkyrie broke to the colony shields and the life support systems failed. "Understood, sir," Jack said, keeping his voice steady. "I'm sorry, Captain. I truly am. Begin evacuation procedures immediately. Prioritize children and families. You have your orders." The screen went dark. The command deck was silent. Everyone had heard. Danny was staring at his boots. Sergeant Rita Hayes, their weapons officer, had tears running down her face. Corporal Tom Bradley was gripping the edge of his console, so hard his knuckles had turned white. Jack walked over to the main window and looked out at the colony below. He could see the residential sector, row after row of habitat modules where families lived. The school where kids learned and played. The medical center where Dr. Allen had delivered 17 babies in the past year alone. The gardens where old Mr. Chin grew actual vegetables from earth seeds, something that made him incredibly proud. How do you choose? How do you decide which child gets on a ship and which one doesn't? Which mother, which father, which family deserves to live? Sir, Danny's voice broke through his thoughts. Should I begin the evacuation protocols? Jack turned around to face his crew. These people trusted him. They looked to him for answers, for leadership, for hope. He thought about his own family back on Earth, his sister Kelly and her 2 kids. He thought about why he joined the military in the first place, all those years ago. It wasn't for glory or adventure. It was to protect people, to stand between innocent civilians and the darkness that lurked in the universe. No, Jack said quietly. Sir, Danny looked confused. Jack's voice grew stronger. I said no. We're not evacuating. Not yet. Rita spoke up, her voice hoarse. Captain, with all due respect, we can't fight them. The numbers. I know the numbers, Sergeant. Jack interrupted. I can count. But I also know that I didn't take an oath to save half the people and abandon the rest. Did you? Silence filled the room. We have 72 hours before life support fails. That means we have 72 hours to find another way. Maybe we can't win a conventional fight. Maybe the odds are impossible. But I'm not giving up on those 20,000 people without trying everything we possibly can. He looked each of them in the eyes. I won't order any of you to stay. This isn't a standard military operation anymore. If you want to leave on those transports, I'll understand. No judgment, no consequences. But I'm staying. I'm going to find a way to save this colony, or I'm going to die trying. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then Tom straightened up from his console. I'm staying, sir. Rita wiped her tears and nodded. Me too, Captain. One by one, every person on that command deck made their choice. They would stay. They would fight. Jack felt something shift inside him. Fear was still there, but it was joined by something else now. Determination. Purpose. He didn't know how they were going to survive this, but he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to let Queen Ravenna take his colony without the fight of her life. He turned back to the window, staring up at those alien ships blocking out the sun. Somewhere up there, Queen Ravenna sat on her throne, probably confident that this would be another easy victory. She had no idea what humans were capable of when they fought for the people they loved. Jack didn't sleep that first night. While his crew worked on evacuation logistics, he locked himself in the intelligence archive room with every piece of data they had on the Valkyrie. Files, videos, intercepted communications, survivor testimonies from other colonies. He went through it all, searching for something, anything that could help. The coffee machine in the corner had been working overtime. Empty cups littered the desk around him. His eyes burned from staring at screens for hours, but he couldn't stop. Somewhere in this mountain of information had to be an answer. Danny brought him a sandwich around midnight. Sir, you should eat something, and maybe sleep. Can't sleep? Jack muttered, scrolling through another report. There's got to be something we're missing. Captain, we've analyzed their tactics 100 times. They're just too strong. Every colony that fought them lasted less than a day. Jack paused. What about the colonies that didn't fight? Danny blinked. What do you mean? You said every colony that fought them. What about the ones that surrendered? Well, those last even less time. The Valkyrie don't take prisoners. They just wipe out everyone and take over the planet. Danny sat down, looking defeated. Either way, everyone dies. Jack leaned back in his chair, rubbing his tired eyes. He pulled up a video file from the Epsilon colony attack. 6 months ago. The footage was shaky, recorded by someone's personal camera before the communication systems went down. It showed Queen Ravenna herself, standing in the ruins of the colony's main square. She was massive, even more intimidating than the report suggested. Her 4 arms moved with terrifying grace, each one ending in claws that gleamed like polished metal. Her skin looked like dark armor, segmented and organic, but it was her eyes that caught Jack's attention. They were intelligent, calculating. This wasn't just a mindless monster. This was a leader who thought and planned. In the video, she was speaking to the colony's governor, who had tried to negotiate. Jack turned up the volume. Your species disappoints me, Ravenna's voice was deep, almost musical. You speak of honor and courage, yet you beg for mercy at the first sign of true power. Where are your warriors? Where are those who would stand and fight? The governor stammered something about protecting civilians. Protecting? Ravenna laughed, a sound that made Jack's skin crawl. You insult them by assuming they need your protection. In my empire, even the weak know how to die with dignity. Jack replayed that section 3 times. Something about it nagged at him. Danny, pull up the cultural analysis reports on the Valkyrim. The anthropological stuff, not the military intelligence. Sir, we don't have much. They don't exactly sit down for interviews. Just find whatever we have. 10 minutes later, Danny returned with a thin file. It was written by Dr. Maria Hoffman, a xenoanthropologist who had studied the Valkyrim from a distance. Most it was speculation based on observed behavior, but one section made Jack sit up straight. Valkyrim society appears to be built entirely around concepts of personal honor and ritual combat. Disputes between individuals, even major political decisions, are settled through one-on-one duels. The Valkyrim word Koresh roughly translates to trial by strength and is mentioned in every intercepted communication we've analyzed. Refusing a Koresh challenge is considered the ultimate shame in their culture. Jack read it again, then a third time. That's it, he whispered. What's it? Danny leaned over his shoulder. They respect combat. Direct, personal combat. That's why Ravenna sounds so disgusted in these videos. Every colony either surrenders immediately or throws soldiers at her fleet in hopeless battles. Nobody has ever challenged her directly. Danny frowned. Well, yeah, because her elite guard surrounds her constantly. You'd have to fight through thousands of Valkyrim warriors just to get close to her. It's suicide. What if you didn't have to fight through them? What if she came to you? Sir, I'm not following. Jack stood up, his mind racing. What if we challenge her to Koresh? Direct combat, one-on-one. Me against her. Winner takes a planet. The color drained from Danny's face. Captain, you can't be serious. She's 10 feet tall with 4 arms and armor that can withstand bullets. You'd be dead in seconds. Maybe, probably actually. Jack started pacing. But here's the thing. In every single conquest, she's complained that humans have no honor, no courage. We're weak because we surrender or we hide behind technology. What if someone finally gave her what she claims to want? A real fight. That's insane. Is it? Think about it. She's never been challenged directly. Her entire worldview is based on personal strength and honor through combat. If I challenge her publicly, in front of her whole fleet, using their own ritual words, she'd have to accept. Refusing would make her look weak in front of her own people. Danny sat down heavily. And when she kills you in about 30 seconds, what then? We've just handed her the planet. She already has a planet, Danny. We have 200 soldiers against 40,000. We're just delaying the inevitable. Jack stopped pacing and looked his friend in the eye. But this way, maybe I can buy us something. Time, maybe. Or maybe I get lucky and actually hurt her enough that she decides we're not worth trouble. Long shot, I know, but it's better than what we have now, which is nothing. Exactly. Danny was quiet for a long moment. The crew is going to think you've lost your mind. Probably. That's why I'm not asking for permission. Jack spent the next 6 hours preparing. He reviewed every scrap of information about Valkyrim combat styles, watched grainy footage of their warriors fighting, studied their movements and techniques. He knew it wouldn't be enough. Queen Ravenna had probably been fighting since before he was born, but he had to try. By morning, he'd made his decision. He called his senior officers to the command deck. Rita, Danny, Tom, and Sergeant Kevin Park, their communications specialist. I need Kevin to set up a broadcast on every frequency we have. Wideband, powerful enough that every Valkyrim ship in the system will receive it. Kevin looked confused. Sir, you want to talk to them? I want to challenge their queen to single combat. The room erupted. All 4 officers started talking at once, their voices overlapping in a chorus of disbelief and concern. Rita was adamant that it was suicide. Tom said they should at least try a conventional defense first. Kevin just stared like Jack had grown a second head. Danny was the only one who stayed quiet. He'd already heard the plan. Jack raised his hand, and the room gradually fell silent. I know how this sounds. I know the odds, but I also know that we're out of options. High Command can't help us. We can't fight them. We can't run. This is the only card we have left to play. But, Captain, Rita's voice was almost pleading, even if she accepts, even if you somehow survive more than a minute, what's the point? We still lose. Maybe, Jack admitted, but maybe not. These Valkyrim, they're all about honor and strength, right? What if seeing a human willing to face their queen one-on-one changes something? What if it makes them respect us? Just a little. Enough to let the civilians evacuate. Enough to spare the colony. I don't know if it'll work, but doing nothing guarantees everyone dies. He looked around at his officers, these people who had become like family over the years. I'm not ordering any of you to support this, but I am asking, will you help me? The silence stretched out. Then Kevin stepped forward. I'll set up the broadcast, Captain. If you're crazy enough to do this, I'm crazy enough to help. One by one, the others nodded. 2 hours later, everything was ready. Jack stood in the communication center, Kevin adjusting the equipment around him. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear in his ears. We're live in 30 seconds, sir, Kevin said. This is going out on every frequency simultaneously. Every ship in the system will hear it. Jack took a deep breath. He'd written down what he wanted to say, but now the paper sat crumpled in his pocket. The words had to come from his heart, not from notes. 10 seconds, sir. Jack thought about the 50,000 people in the colony, the kids playing in the gardens, the families sharing meals, the old man growing earth vegetables, all of them depending on him to do something impossible. 3, 2, 1. You're live, Captain. Jack looked directly into the camera. Queen Ravenna of the Valkyrim Empire, I am Captain Jack Morrison of New Terra Colony. You claim humans are weak. You say we have no honor, no courage. You're wrong. I challenge you to Koresh. Single combat. You and me. No guards, no fleet, no armies. Just 2 warriors. If I win, you leave the system and never return. If you win, you take the planet without resistance. Do you accept, or are you afraid to face one human alone? He signaled Kevin to cut the transmission. It was done. Now they could only wait. The bombardment of the outer defenses had been constant for the past day, a steady rhythm of destruction. But now, suddenly, it stopped. Complete silence fell over the colony. Jack stood frozen, hardly daring to breathe. Around him, his crew stared at their monitors in disbelief. Then a voice filled every speaker in the colony. Deep, powerful, amused. Queen Ravenna herself. I accept human. Your courage amuses me. We shall meet in combat, and I will show you what true strength means. Prepare yourself for Koresh. Danny let out a breath he'd been holding. She actually accepted. I can't believe she actually accepted. Jack felt his legs go weak. He'd done it. The impossible gamble had worked. Queen Ravenna was coming for him. Now he just had to survive long enough to make it mean something. The Central Dome was the heart of New Terra. It was where people gathered for festivals, where kids played zero-gravity sports, where the community came together. Now it had been transformed into something else entirely. An arena, a place where one man would face a monster. Jack stood in the center, looking up at the transparent dome above. Through it, he could see the Valkyrim fleet, thousands of ships hovering in the darkness. Somewhere up there, Queen Ravenna was watching. The entire colony had been evacuated to the lower levels for safety. Only his crew remained, monitoring from a command center. Danny's voice crackled in his earpiece. Captain, she's entering the dome now. South entrance. Jack turned. The massive doors at the far end slid open with a hiss. What walked through made his breath catch in his throat. Queen Ravenna was even bigger in person. 10 feet of pure predator, moving with a grace that seemed impossible for something so large. Her forearms swung naturally as she walked, each one ending in claws that looked like they could tear through steel. Her skin was dark, almost black, with segments of natural armor that overlapped like scales. But her eyes were what held his attention. They glowed with an inner light, intelligent and calculating. Behind her, a dozen Valkyrim warriors entered, each one nearly as intimidating as she was. They spread out along the edges of the dome, watching, witnesses to what their queen probably expected to be a quick execution. Ravenna stopped about 50 feet away from Jack. When she spoke, her voice echoed through the dome, deep and musical. "You are the one who challenged me? You are so small, human." Jack kept his voice steady. "Size isn't everything, Your Majesty." She laughed, a sound that rumbled like distant thunder. "Brave words. I respect that. It has been too long since someone showed me true courage." She gestured to one of her warriors, who stepped forward carrying an ornate box. "The terms of Koresh are ancient and simple. We fight with whatever weapons we bring. No outside interference. Combat continues until one yields or dies. Do you understand?" "I understand. You may still withdraw. Surrender your colony, and I will make the deaths quick. Painless. This is more mercy than I usually offer." Jack reached down and drew his combat knife from his belt. It was standard military issue, nothing special. The blade was about 8 inches long, sharp enough to cut through most materials. Against those claws and that armor, it looked like a toothpick. "I'm not surrendering," Jack said. Ravenna's eyes gleamed with something that might have been approval. "Then let us begin. Try not to disappoint me, Captain Morrison." She didn't wait for a response. One moment she was standing still. The next she was charging across the dome floor with terrifying speed. All 4 arms spread wide, claws extended, moving like a freight train made of muscle and fury. Jack's training kicked in instantly. He didn't try to meet her charge head-on. That would be suicide. Instead, he dove to the side at the last possible second, rolling across the floor as those claws slashed through the space where he'd been standing. Ravenna spun around, faster than something that size should be able to move. She slashed again, a complex pattern with all 4 arms that would have torn a normal opponent to shreds. But Jack was already moving, staying low, using his smaller size to his advantage. He slid under her guard and slashed upward with his knife, aiming for the gap between her armor segments. The blade connected. It barely penetrated, maybe half an inch, but it was enough. Dark purple blood welled up from the cut. Ravenna stopped. She looked down at the wound, then at Jack. For a moment, there was complete silence in the dome. "You cut me," she said, her voice filled with something between surprise and anger. "That's kind of the point," Jack replied, already backing away, keeping his distance. The Valkyrim warriors along the walls stirred, muttering to each other in their clicking language. Clearly, they hadn't expected this either. Ravenna's expression changed. The amusement was gone. Now there was focus, intensity. "I see. You are not completely helpless. Good. This might actually be entertaining." She came at him again, but this time with more caution. Her attacks were calculated now, testing his defenses, looking for patterns. Jack kept moving, never staying in one place. He'd studied the dome layout for hours before this fight. He knew every support pillar, every change in elevation, every piece of equipment that hadn't been removed. When Ravenna lunged, he used a pillar for cover, forcing her to commit to one direction. When she tried to corner him, he scrambled up a maintenance ladder to a higher platform, making her follow. His knife found 2 more small cuts, one on her shoulder, one on her lower arm. Neither deep enough to slow her down, but enough to prove he was a threat. "You fight like a coward," Ravenna said, breathing slightly harder now. "Hiding, running. Is this human honor?" Jack jumped down from the platform, landing in a crouch. "I fight like someone who wants to win. Honor doesn't mean being stupid." He could see it was starting to frustrate her. She was used to opponents who faced her directly, who tried to match her strength with their own. Every other species of Valkyrim had conquered, probably fought with the same basic tactics, because that's what made sense in their warrior culture. Stand your ground, prove your strength, die with honor. But humans didn't evolve as the strongest species on Earth. They evolved as the smartest, the ones who used tools, who planned, who adapted. Jack wasn't going to beat Ravenna in a contest of raw power, so he wouldn't try. Instead, he led her on a chase through the dome, always moving, always thinking 3 steps ahead. When she expected him to retreat, he attacked. When she thought he'd attack, he created distance. He made her work for every inch, burning her energy while conserving his own. The fight, had been going for 20 minutes when Jack saw his opening. Ravenna had backed him against a wall, or so she thought. All four arms came down in a devastating strike that would have crushed him flat. But Jack had positioned himself next to an emergency air vent. He kicked it open and rolled through, the claws slamming into the metal wall where he'd been standing. He came out behind her. For just a second, her back was exposed. Jack drove his knife into the gap between her shoulder armor plates with all his strength. This time it went deep, 3 inches, maybe 4. Ravenna roared, a sound that shook the entire dome. She spun, one of her arms catching Jack across the chest and sending him flying. He hit the ground hard, his armor absorbing most of the impact but still leaving him breathless. He rolled to his feet, clutching his ribs. That was going to leave a bruise. But Ravenna was bleeding now, really bleeding. Purple blood ran down her back from a wound. "Impossible," one of the Valkyrie warriors muttered. Jack's earpiece translated it automatically. Ravenna reached back with one arm, touching the wound, then looking at her blood-covered claws. When she looked at Jack again, there was something new in her eyes. Not anger. Respect. "You are better than I expected. Human. Much better." She flexed her 4 arms, testing the injury. It was slowing her down, just a little. But now I will stop playing. She was right. Jack could see it in the way she moved. Before, she'd been testing him, almost toying with him. Now she was fighting for real. The next exchange was brutal. Ravenna came at him with everything she had, her 4 arms moving in patterns so complex that Jack could barely track them. He blocked what he could, dodged what he couldn't, and took hits when he had no choice. His armor cracked under the assault. He felt ribs bruise, maybe break. Blood ran from a cut above his eye, making it hard to see. But he kept fighting. Every time she forced him back, he found a way to slip through her guard. His knife found her arm, her leg, her side. Small cuts, nothing fatal, but they added up. She was bleeding from a dozen wounds now. They broke apart, both breathing hard. Jack's vision was blurring. He'd taken more damage than he'd realized. Ravenna was hurt too, favoring her right side where he'd cut her deepest. "You surprise me, Captain Morrison," she said, her voice genuinely impressed now. "In all my conquests, no one has ever made me bleed this much. You fight with cunning, with intelligence, not just strength." Jack wiped blood from his eyes. "We're human. It's what we do best." "I am beginning to see that." Ravenna straightened up, all 4 arms spread wide. "One final exchange. Let us end this properly." Jack knew he was running out of time. His body was failing. He could feel it in every painful breath, every shaking muscle. But he'd come this far. He wasn't going to quit now. They charged at each other one last time. Ravenna's claws slashed through the air, aiming to end it. Jack ducked under the first strike, rolled past the second, and came up inside her guard. Her 3rd arm caught him across the shoulder, tearing through his armor. Her 4th arm was coming down for his head. Jack did the only thing he could. He dropped his knife and grabbed her wounded arm with both hands, using her own momentum against her. He pulled hard, twisting his body, redirecting her force. Ravenna's eyes widened in surprise as she lost her balance. All that mass, all that power, suddenly working against her. She crashed to the ground, and Jack ended up on top of her, his hands pressed against her throat. They froze like that. Jack didn't have the strength to actually hurt her in this position, and they both knew it. But the symbolism was clear. He'd taken down the undefeatable queen. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The dome was absolutely silent. Even the Valkyrie warriors seemed stunned. Then Ravenna started to laugh. It started as a chuckle and built into a full, genuine laugh that echoed through the dome. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Jack collapsed beside her, too exhausted to move. His whole body felt like one giant bruise. Ravenna sat up slowly, touching the wounds he'd given her. "You cannot defeat me, human. We both know this. But you have done what no one else has ever done. You made me fight for it." The fight continued long past what anyone thought possible. Jack had lost track of time. Minutes blurred into what felt like hours. His entire world had narrowed down to one simple goal: survive the next 5 seconds, then the next 5 after that. His left arm dangled uselessly at his side. Something was wrong with the shoulder, dislocated or broken. He couldn't tell anymore. Every breath sent sharp pain through his chest where Ravenna had landed a solid hit. 3 ribs cracked, maybe more. Blood ran from cuts on his face, his arms, his legs. His armor was in pieces, barely hanging on, but he was still standing. More importantly, Ravenna was bleeding too. Jack had counted 18 wounds on the Queen. 18 times his knife had found its mark. None of them were deep enough to be fatal, but each one was carefully placed. He'd hit joints where her armor was weakest, struck at muscles that controlled her movements, targeted areas that would slow her down without needing a killing blow. Danny's voice kept crackling in his earpiece, though Jack could barely process the words anymore. "Captain, your vitals are critical. You need to stop. Please." Jack couldn't answer, didn't have the breath for it. He kept his eyes on Ravenna, watching for her next move. The Queen was circling him now, more cautious than before. She wasn't underestimating him anymore. That much was clear. Her movements were still powerful, still deadly, but there was a wariness that hadn't been there at the start. "You are persistent," Ravenna said, her voice showing strain for the first time. Like an insect that refuses to die no matter how many times you strike it. Jack used a support pillar to keep himself upright. His legs were shaking. "Thanks. I think." She lunged again, but slower this time. Jack barely managed to roll aside, feeling something tear in his side. He came up with his knife ready, but his grip was weak. The weapon nearly slipped from his blood-slicked fingers. Ravenna's claw caught him across the ribs, the same ones that were already cracked. Jack heard himself scream, a sound that didn't seem like it came from his own throat. He hit the ground hard. This was it. He couldn't get up from this one. His body had finally reached its limit. But then he thought about the people in the lower levels. Families huddled together, listening to this fight, praying for a miracle. Children who didn't understand why the world had suddenly become so scary. Old Mr. Chun with his earth vegetables, probably still worried about his garden even with an alien fleet overhead. Jack's hand pressed against the floor. His arm shook with the effort, but he pushed, inch by painful inch. He dragged himself upright. His vision swam. Everything hurt, but he got his feet under him and stood, raising his knife in a guard position that was more instinct than conscious thought. Ravenna had been moving in for what she clearly expected to be the finishing blow. She stopped mid-stride, staring at him. Jack swayed, barely conscious, but he was standing. His eyes met hers with pure defiance. "Stay down," Ravenna said. It wasn't a taunt. It almost sounded like advice. "You have fought well, better than anyone I have ever faced. But this is over. Your body cannot take any more." "Probably right," Jack managed to gasp out. Blood dripped from his mouth. He might have bitten his tongue at some point. "But I'm not done yet." He took a step forward. His leg nearly gave out, but he caught himself. Another step. His knife was so heavy now, like it weighed 100 pounds, but he kept it raised. Ravenna tilted her head, studying him like he was some fascinating puzzle she couldn't solve. Then she did something completely unexpected. She lowered her forearms, stepping back into a neutral stance. "Stop," she commanded. Not an attack. An order to cease fighting. Jack didn't lower his knife, but he didn't advance either. He couldn't have even if he wanted to. The Queen walked closer, but slowly, deliberately, not attacking. Her glowing eyes searched his face. "I do not understand you, human. Look at yourself. You can barely stand. Your weapon is almost falling from your hands. I could end this in one strike. You know this. I know this. Yet you continue to rise. Why?" Jack's chest heaved with each painful breath. "Because I have to." That is not an answer. Ravenna's voice carried genuine confusion. "You cannot win. You must know this by now. Even if you had 10 times your current strength, the outcome would be the same. So why do you throw your life away in a battle that is already lost?" "It's not lost until I stop fighting." "But why fight at all?" She gestured with one of her arms at the dome walls, toward where the colony lay beyond. "These people you protect, most of them you do not even know. They are not your blood, not your family. In my empire, we fight for ourselves, for our own glory and advancement. The strong rise, The weak fall. This is natural order. Yet you are willing to die for strangers, for people weaker than yourself. Explain this to me. Jack leaned against a nearby crate, needing the support. His mind was foggy from blood loss and exhaustion, but her question cut through the haze. It was the most honest thing she'd said since the fight began. They need me to, Jack said simply. Ravenna made a sound that might have been frustration. You said this before. It is not an answer. It's the only answer I have. Jack looked up at her, meeting those alien eyes. You're right that I can't win. You're faster, stronger, have 4 arms instead of 2. You've been fighting your whole life. I'm just a soldier from a mining colony. But none of that matters. How does it not matter? Because down in those lower levels, there are 50,000 people who can't fight back, kids who can't defend themselves, families who just want to live peaceful lives. Someone has to stand between them and the things that want to hurt them. That's what I do. That's what we do. He pushed off in the crate, standing on his own again despite everything screaming at him to just lie down. I don't fight for glory. I don't fight to prove I'm strong. I fight because there are people who need someone to fight for them. And as long as I can still stand, as long as I can still hold this knife, I'm going to keep fighting. Ravenna was silent for a long moment. Her 4 arms hung at her sides, claws retracted. She looked at the wounds he'd given her, then back at him. In all my conquests, she said slowly, I have never met anyone like you. Every species we have defeated, they fought for survival, for territory, for resources, the strong protecting themselves. But you are not strong by any measure my people understand, yet you draw strength from protecting those weaker than yourself. She walked around him in a slow circle, like she was seeing him for the first time. My warriors fight to prove their worth, to rise in rank, to claim glory. They are powerful because they seek to become more powerful. But you fight not to rise above others, but to lift them up. This is alien to me. Jack watched her warily, unsure where this was going. That's what makes us human. Perhaps. Ravenna stopped in front of him again. One of her claws reached out and Jack tensed, but she only touched the wound she'd given him, carefully, almost gently. You are broken. These injuries, they would kill most beings within the hour, without medical treatment. Yet you continue to stand, not because you're strong enough, but because you believe you must be. They're counting on me, Jack said. His voice was getting weaker. He could feel consciousness starting to slip. Can't let them down. These people, they are fortunate to have such a guardian. Foolish, but fortunate. Ravenna stepped back. I have learned something today, Captain Morrison. Something I did not expect to learn from a species I consider beneath mine. The dome was spinning now. Jack's legs finally gave out, and he collapsed to his knees. His knife clattered to the floor. He tried to pick it up, but his hands wouldn't cooperate anymore. Ravenna caught him before he fell completely, her 4 arms surprisingly gentle as she lowered him to the ground. Rest now, human. You have earned it. The colony, Jack managed to whisper. Please, the people. We will speak of this, Ravenna said. But first, you need medical attention. I did not come here to watch a warrior like you die from wounds I gave in honorable combat. She turned to her warriors. Bring their medical staff. Now! One of the Valkyrim hesitated. Your Majesty, the Koresh is not complete. He has not surrendered. Ravenna's eyes blazed. I am declaring this combat concluded. This human has shown me something more valuable than a simple victory. He has shown me what true courage looks like. Not the courage to fight for yourself, but the courage to fight for others even when there is no hope of winning. She looked back down at Jack, who was barely conscious now. Your species confuses me, Captain Morrison. You are weak individually, yet somehow strong together. You protect those who cannot protect themselves, and draw power from that duty rather than from dominating them. In my empire, this will be considered madness. Yet I cannot deny what I have witnessed here today. Jack tried to respond, but darkness was closing in. The last thing he heard before unconsciousness took him was Ravenna's voice, speaking words he never expected to hear. Perhaps the strong have something to learn from those they consider weak. Then everything went black, and Jack knew nothing more. Jack woke up in the medical center 3 days later. His whole body was wrapped in bandages and hooked up to more machines than he could count. Dr. Allen was checking one of the monitors when Jack's eyes opened. "Welcome back, Captain," the doctor said with a tired smile. "You've been out for a while. We weren't sure you'd make it, to be honest." Jack tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. Dr. Allen held a cup of water to his lips, helping him drink. After a moment, Jack managed to croak out a single word. "Colony? Everyone's fine. Safe. You should rest more before we get into all that. Tell me," Jack insisted, his voice getting slightly stronger. "What happened?" Dr. Allen sighed and pulled up a chair. "You're not going to believe it." "I'm not sure I believe it, and I watched the whole thing happen." He explained that after Jack lost consciousness in the dome, Queen Ravenna had personally carried him to the medical center. Not her warriors. Her, the queen of the Valkyrie Empire, had cradled a wounded human in her 4 arms and brought him to the doctors herself, demanding they save his life. "She stood right outside that door for 6 hours while we worked on you," Dr. Allen said, pointing to the entrance. "Wouldn't move. Wouldn't speak to anyone except to ask if you'd survive. It was the strangest thing I've ever seen." Jack tried to sit up, but pain shot through his ribs. "Where is she now?" "That's the really strange part. She's still here, on the planet. Her entire fleet is still in orbit, but they haven't fired a single shot since your fight. She's been in meetings with Danny and the Colony Council for the past 2 days." Before Jack could ask more questions, the door opened. Queen Ravenna had to duck to fit through the doorway, her massive form filling the small medical room. Dr. Allen quickly excused himself, leaving them alone. Ravenna stood at the foot of Jack's bed, studying him with those glowing eyes. "You are awake. Good. My healers said you would survive, but I needed to see for myself." "Your healers?" Jack asked. "Yes. Your Dr. Allen is skilled, but Valkyrie medical technology is more advanced. I had my people assist. You had internal bleeding that your equipment did not detect. You are welcome." Jack didn't know what to say to that. The alien queen who'd been trying to conquer his colony had saved his life. Nothing about this made sense. Ravenna seemed to sense his confusion. She pulled up a chair, one of the reinforced ones from the cargo bay that could handle her weight, and sat down. It was strange seeing something so powerful trying to make itself less intimidating. "I have been thinking," she said slowly, "about our combat, about what you said, about what I saw." She held up one of her 4 arms, showing the bandage wounds he'd given her. 18 times you cut me. 18 times you found weaknesses in my defense. You, a being half my size with a fraction of my strength. Do you know how many opponents have wounded me even once in the past decade?" Jack shook his head. "None. 0. I am the greatest warrior in the Valkyrie Empire. I have conquered 14 systems without a single defeat. My people believe I am invincible." She paused, looking at her claws. "I believed it too, perhaps, until you." "I got lucky," Jack said. "No, luck was not what I witnessed. You fought with intelligence, with strategy, with determination that defied logic." Ravenna leaned forward. "But that is not what has occupied my thoughts these past days. What haunts me is what you said. They need me to." Such simple words, yet they contain a concept my empire has never understood. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the colony below. People were walking the streets again, cautiously returning to their normal lives. Children were playing in the gardens. After our fight, I did something I have never done before. I asked my commanders to show me the intelligence files on humanity. All of them. Not just military assessments, but everything. Your history, your culture, your broadcasts. Ravenna turned back to face him. "Do you know what I found? Hundreds of recorded incidents of humans risking their lives for strangers, running into burning structures to save people they have never met, jumping into dangerous waters to rescue children who are not their own, sacrificing themselves not for territory, not for resources, not even for their own offspring, but for complete strangers." She walked back to the bed, her voice growing more animated. "In one video, I watched a human stand in front of a moving vehicle to push a child out of its path. The human died. The child lived. They were not related. The human gained nothing from this action except death, yet they chose to do it anyway. That's what people do, Jack said quietly. We help each other. But why? Ravenna's question was genuine, almost pleading. In my empire, such behavior would be considered weakness, foolishness. The strong survive by being strong, not by sacrificing for the weak. Yet your species thrives. You spread across multiple systems despite being physically inferior to most spacefaring races. How? Jack thought about it for a moment. Because we're not alone. No human faces anything alone if they don't have to. When one of us falls, others pick them up. When one of us is threatened, others stand beside them. We're weak individually. Yeah, but together, we're strong in a way that doesn't show up on any power measurement. Ravenna sat down again, and for the first time, Jack saw something in her eyes that looked almost vulnerable. I have spent 3 days watching your people, observing how they interact. A child fell in your central garden yesterday. 5 adults rushed to help, none of them the child's parents. Your workers share their food rations with those who have less. Your doctors treated my wounded warriors, even though we came here as conquerors. She paused, seeming to struggle with her next words. My empire is vast. We control hundreds of worlds. We have power beyond measure. But after watching your people, I realize we have something missing. Something fundamental. We know how to take. We know how to conquer. But we do not know how to care for those weaker than ourselves. We see it as pointless, wasteful. And now, Jack asked, now I question everything I have built my life upon. Ravenna looked at her 4 arms, at the weapons they had always been. What is the purpose of strength, if not to protect? What is the point of power, if it only serves to gain more power? You showed me this in our combat. You were weaker, slower, less equipped. By every measure, you should have fallen in seconds. Yet you fought for hours because you were not fighting for yourself. She met his eyes directly. Captain Morrison, I came to this system to conquer, to add another world to my empire's glory. But I am leaving with something different. A question that will not leave my mind. What if my empire has been wrong? What if true strength is not the ability to dominate, but the willingness to sacrifice for others? Jack felt his heart racing. Are you saying, I am withdrawing my fleet from this system. New Terra will remain free. Ravenna held up a hand before Jack could respond. But more than that, I wish to propose something that will make my commanders think I have lost my mind. An alliance between humanity and the Valkyrim Empire. An alliance? Jack couldn't hide his shock. Yes, my people are strong, but we are incomplete. We know conquest, but we do not know compassion. We understand power, but we do not understand purpose beyond gaining more power. Your species, weak as you are by our standards, possesses something we desperately need. You know why strength should be used. Not for domination, but for protection. Ravenna stood, her full height making her tower over the bed. I want you to teach us. Teach my people what it means to fight not for yourself, but for others. Show us how a species of fragile beings becomes unstoppable through caring for one another. In exchange, we offer our strength, our technology, our protection. Jack's mind was reeling. This was beyond anything he'd imagined. I'm just one soldier. I can't speak for all humanity. No, but you can speak for yourself. And your actions spoke louder than any words ever could. Ravenna moved toward the door, then paused. I am leaving representatives here on New Terra. They will learn from your people how you organize your society, how you help those in need, how you build communities instead of hierarchies. And when you are recovered, Captain Morrison, I hope you will come to my flagship. Teach my warriors what you taught me. And what's that? Jack asked. Ravenna looked back at him, and there was genuine respect in her glowing eyes. That the strongest warrior is not the one who can defeat any enemy, but the one who will stand against impossible odds for those who cannot stand for themselves. That courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to fight despite it. That true power comes not from ruling over others, but from lifting them up. She bowed her head slightly, a gesture of respect. 3 days ago, I came here to conquer. You came to defend. We both expected a simple outcome. But you gave me something far more valuable than another conquered world. You gave me a reason to question, to learn, to grow. For that, Captain Jack Morrison, you have my gratitude, and my people's eternal respect. The news spread across the galaxy within days. Queen Ravenna, the Unconquerable, had withdrawn from a conquest, not because she was defeated, but because she chose to. The first human-Valkyrie treaty was signed a week later in the central dome where Jack and Ravenna had fought. Jack stood beside the Queen as the documents were signed, his arm still in a sling, ribs still healing. Representatives from both species watched as two former enemies became allies. The treaty was simple but profound. Mutual defense, cultural exchange, and a commitment to protect the weak rather than exploit them. Danny stood with the other officers, shaking his head in amazement. A week ago, we thought we were all going to die. Now we're allies with the most powerful empire in the galaxy. How did this happen? Rita smiled. Simple. Jack showed them what humans are really made of. Old Mr. Chun was there too, having brought vegetables from his garden as a gift for the Valkyrie representatives. They were confused by the gesture at first, a warrior race receiving vegetables. But Ravenna explained it to them. This was how humans showed care, by sharing what they had, even with strangers. As the ceremony concluded, Ravenna placed one of her 4 hands on Jack's shoulder, careful not to aggravate his injuries. You changed everything, Captain. One human, with one knife, and a determination to never give up. You did not defeat me in combat, but you won something far more important. You won my understanding. Jack looked out at the crowd, humans and Valkyrie standing together for the first time in history. I was just doing my job, protecting people who needed protecting. That is exactly my point, Ravenna said. You see it as just a job, something anyone should do, but it is extraordinary, and it will change the galaxy. She was right. Within a year, the Valkyrie Empire had transformed. Warriors who once conquered for glory now served as protectors. Worlds that were once subjugated became partners. The strong began using their power to defend the weak instead of ruling over them. And it all started because one ordinary soldier from a mining colony refused to give up, refused to abandon the people counting on him, and showed an alien queen that true strength comes not from power, but from the courage to care. New Terra thrived. The Alliance held. And Captain Jack Morrison, who just wanted to save his colony, ended up saving something much bigger. He saved the idea that strength without compassion is meaningless, and that the bravest thing anyone can do is stand up for those who cannot stand for themselves. The stars would never be the same.